Hello, everybody. My name is John Mix, and I'm the founder of the company called Finis. And today we have with us Mallory Weggemann, and we're going to spend some time speaking with you and trying to pick you up and talk to you about what is it just like in these really crazy, tough times. Humberto, thank you very much for putting this together. As a brand, I'm just a brief statement about us as a company. I'm a co-founder with Pablo Morales, was a great Olympic swimmer. And after his performance in Barcelona, we started this company with the intent of simplifying swimming. There were things that came naturally to Pablo that never came naturally to me. And we said, let's make high quality products that allow coaches and swimmers to intuitively become better swimmers, with the hopes that everyone will swim for the rest of their life. So these have been really tough times, and I'm gonna share some information with you about Mallory before we get started here. So Mallory has been a competitive swimmer since the age of 7. And on January 21st, 2008, she went to the hospital to receive a third epidural injection that she was receiving to help her treat back pain caused by postherpetic neuralgia. And that's a tough one. But the epidural injection that was supposed to help with the debilitating pain instead left Mallory as a paraplegic with complete loss of movement from her abdomen down. Just 3 months after her injury, at the age of 18, Mallory chose to return to the pool. In April of 2008, her older sister found an article in the local newspaper discussing the Paralympic swimming trials at the University of Minnesota. Through the encouragement of her family, Mallory attended the meet as a spectator with her sister and met several of the U.S. national team coaches, as well as her former coach, Jim Anderson. Still coping with her new disability, Weggemann found one thing had unchanged: her love for swimming. Less than 4 years later, Mallory went on to set 15 world records and 34 American records, win an ESPN ESPY Award for the best female athlete with a disability, on her way to winning gold in the 50-meter freestyle and bronze in the 4x100-meter relay at the London 2012 Paralympic Games. Following the London 2012 Games, Mallory launched her career as a highly sought-after motivational speaker and began her training for Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. Although in 2014, fate would leave Weggemann with another twist in her athletic journey after she sustained permanent nerve damage to her left arm. And faced with the reality of potentially having to retire, Weggemann decided that she wasn't willing to give up her dream for Rio in 2016 without a fight. She returned to the water, her sanctuary, and looked to the black line as she fought her way back with the support of her coach, Steve Van Dyne. Weggemann and her comeback. And when Mallory talks about her comeback following injury, she says, it takes a community and it takes a belief that you can be better, that you can fight back, and that you can defy all odds, and that you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. A comeback is about the desire to redefine all limitations, having the courage to do what many would call impossible, the passion for what you love to do, and most of all, having the grace to know when you simply cannot do it alone. In 2019, Mallory staged yet another comeback and took the Paralympic world by storm when she won 2 gold medals and a silver at the 2019 World Championships in London, and now currently training for the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games as a 2-time Paralympian and a 15-time world champion. In addition to her success and accolades in the pool, Mallory has served as an analyst for numerous Paralympic sport outlets, including as a commentator on NBC for the Pyeongchang 2018 Paralympic Games, the first female reporter in a wheelchair ever to serve in this capacity for NBC. Mallory, thank you so much for joining us. And I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm very excited to be with you guys, and thank you, Humberto, as well to you for putting this together. I see that we have 41 of you guys in our attendees right now. And while I kind of kick things off, I would love if you could do me a favor and in the chat box, just let us know, are you a family? Are some of you age group swimmers, or some of you senior swimmers? Kind of where are you at in your swimming journey? Just so I kind of have an idea of who's with us today, or if there's coaches with us as well. I think that would be great to know too. And I'm sure that means we maybe have some parents tuning in. So if you guys are comfortable, feel free to hit the chat box and give me some of that. And then as well, feel free to ask questions. I want to share a little bit of my background, but I would love to, if you guys are comfortable. I can't see you all, wish I could, but I can see your chats. So we can kind of make it conversational in there as well, and I can answer any questions. John did a great job with kind of the high level introduction. And when he started off, he really started with something I think is true for all of us. And it's just, this is a weird time in all of our lives, for adults, for kids, for athletes, for really everybody in their journey. What's happened in 2020 is something we haven't faced before. And it's probably left a lot of you, if not all of you, frustrated at times, and frustrated with just the constant ever evolving change and that uncertainty of wondering, where do we go from here, or what's next? You know, you guys, I'm sure as a club have gone through getting shut down at some point and not being able to go to a pool and swim. And, you know, I think that there's something to be said about what it is that we are learning as we navigate through 2020. And we're all learning. And I think that that's one thing that I've really taken out of this year. And, you know, John hit on in my bio, when I was 18 years old, I was paralyzed. And it was a very difficult time in my life, to say the least. I think that that is something that essentially at this point goes without saying. I graduated high school in June of 2007. And in January of 2008, I went in for what was to be my third and final epidural injection for back pain. And it was a really simple procedure. I was to walk in that morning and I'd walk out that afternoon. I'd go back to class the next morning. And when that's not how that line of events went, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to think when my life went from simply walking into a procedure room in one moment and being wheeled out the next and admitted to the hospital for the next 6 weeks. And over the course of those 6 weeks, I heard phrases I'd never heard of before. We were talking about spinal cord injuries. We were talking about paralysis. I was learning about how to transfer from a bed to my wheelchair versus just simply stand up on my own 2 feet and take a step. And everything that I fundamentally knew as a person changed in that moment. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what life looked like tomorrow. I didn't know what life looked like next week, let alone next year or 10 years down the road. And it's now been 12 years since that day. And as difficult as that day was, and as challenging as that journey was, one thing that I've really reflected on and found so much solace in this year when there's been all of this change is the idea that in that moment on January 22nd, 2008, the day after I was paralyzed, I wanted nothing more than to go back to my life the few days prior. I yearned for days and weeks and months to just go back to life the day before my paralysis. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to go back. And somewhere along that way, I realized that whether we like it or not, going back's not an option. And constantly living, looking in our rearview mirror, hoping that maybe we can go back, it never moves us forward. And so this year in particular has been a challenging year. It's been a hard year for me personally. It's been a really hard year for me professionally. And it's been a hard year just in seeing our world and our society hurt, and knowing that so many people are going through their own challenges right now. And I think in so many ways, I look back to January of 2008, because I've heard that comment from so many people time and time again of, well, what if we don't go back to what it once was? And it's a valid fear. It's a valid concern. It's a valid thought. But I think there's power in understanding that it's also okay to not go back to what it once was. And it's okay to, in this moment, despite how challenging it is, realize that day by day, we are becoming better and stronger people for what it is that we are navigating through. I was paralyzed on January 21st, 2008. I got back into the pool for the first time on April 8th, 2008. 2.5 months after my injury, I found the water again. And I, like so many of you guys, I was a club swimmer through and through. I'd swam competitively since I was 7 years old. I have 2 older sisters who both swam competitively as well. We grew up in Minnesota and just the quintessential swim family. Our laundry room was filled with suits hanging to dry, waiting for our next workout. And our weekends were filled with what my parents loved to call the sit and sweat, as we were packed in pools for swim meets every weekend. And that was our life. That was everything we knew. And when I was injured, I admittedly assumed that I would never swim again. My world was filled with being told all the things that I wouldn't do again. I was told that I would never walk again. I was told the way that that fact would just change my life holistically. And so naturally, I assumed I wouldn't swim again. And so when I heard about the Paralympic movement for the first time, it was a Saturday morning in April. And I had just gotten out of the hospital 4 weeks prior. I was still figuring out how to wheel my own wheelchair, let alone move about the world and function as a person. And my sister saw the newspaper article that morning. And it was about an athlete who was training for the 2008 Beijing Paralympic Games. And she was going to be competing at trials that weekend. And so we read the information, and that was a Saturday morning. And the final session of finals was that night. And we went to the pool and watched probably one of the most, for me, life-changing moments unfold, because I wheeled into that pool deck and I looked over the railing at the University of Minnesota Natatorium, and I went from this timid, terrified teenage girl, and for the first time in months, I actually smiled. Not one of those like forced smiles we do when mom and dad ask how your day was, but you don't really want to tell them that it was a really crappy day. But like one of those genuine smiles. And my sister was standing next to me, and I just looked at her and I said, maybe in 4 years I could be here. I went back to that pool 2 days later and I got in the water. I was terrified. I was petrified. When I was in the hospital, my physical therapist learned that I was a swimmer. And so they naturally thought that water PT would be a great place for me. Unfortunately, water PT stemmed this big, ugly fear for the water. A place that for my entire life had been my sanctuary became probably my greatest fear within a matter of 5 minutes on my first day of water PT. I was white-knuckled to the armrest of the wheelchair that they wheeled me in the pool on. It took every ounce of them to get me out of that chair and try to just float. I went back day after day for a while, telling myself mind over matter. Eventually, I'm going to love the water. It's my sanctuary. And I didn't. And so I finally stopped going to water PT. I told my therapist and my parents I couldn't do it anymore. It was robbing me of so many years of happy memories and replacing them with memories of just complete and utter fear. So when I went to that pool on April 8th of 2008, that's all I could think about. How scared I was, how much uncertainty was before me. I didn't bring my suit that day, but luckily one of my high school teammates was now a Minnesota Gopher. They had just finished practice, and she walked out of that locker room, saw me, went right back in, grabbed a suit, and handed it to me. I put the suit on, and I went out onto the pool deck. I sat on the pool deck with my feet dangling in the water with my dad, my new coach, and 2 of my high school teammates over my shoulder. Every ounce of me wanted to turn it in that day. I wanted to get back into my wheelchair and just say, forget it. Let's try again tomorrow. But I realized that there's power in finding the courage to lean in. And there are going to be plenty of times in our lives where we're going to be terrified, where life is going to feel scary and all consuming. And we're going to have to find a way to lean into that. I pushed off the side of the pool and I kind of flopped in the water, navigated myself, started treading water, wanted to see what my legs were going to do. Were they going to float? Were they going to sink? It was all new territory for me. And Jim, my coach, looked at me and he said, just start swimming. And I placed one hand in front of the other and started forming a freestyle stroke. And within 5, maybe 6 strokes, that black line became home again. Every fear seemed to magically just wash away. And it felt like it was the one place that had been preserved through all of this. That black line was still the same shape, the same color, the same everything that I remembered it to be. It didn't matter how much in my life had changed. That was a constant that I could turn to. Here I am 12 years later, and I look back on that and I realize how much that's relatable to just life. How much it's relatable to right now, what we're all going through. That fear, that unknown, but yet that desire and need to find the courage to still keep going, even if we don't know what's coming around the corner. When I talk about swimming, I always go back to that day, April 8th, 2008. In so many ways, swimming saved my life. It became my place to grieve, but it also became my place to realize that it's okay to bridge our past to our present. We don't have to live looking back, but we can grab pieces of it and bring it along that journey with us. You don't just have to forget and move on. Somewhere along the way, the black line taught me that we don't really ever move on, we just move forward. A year after that day, I made the US national team for the first time. It was 11 years ago. With the exception of a few injuries, I've proudly been a member of the national team since 2009. About a month after making the national team, I broke my first American record. It was almost a year to the date of my first race back in the pool. And mind you, my first race back in the pool was Memorial Day weekend of 2008. I was maybe not even 6 months after my paralysis. It was an open club meet in Minnesota, so it was all based on times, which I had none of. I was 19 years old, and I raced all 8 and 9-year-olds. And every single kid on that pool deck beat me, and like by body lengths. And for me, there was this joy in realizing that it didn't matter that I was losing. It was about realizing that I still loved getting behind a starting block. And while I started from the water at that time and I hadn't learned how to go off a block yet, I got behind that block and I got to put my goggles on and I got to race. It didn't matter that I lost every race. I just was there. I was in the fight. A year later, I broke my first American record in that same pool at the University of Minnesota. So pretty much every single one of my early memories back to the sport were made. Handful of months after that, I broke my first 3 world records. And each time I swam, I just wanted to get faster and faster. There's something beautiful about knowing when you're hovering that black line, you have all the control. I can't control what's going on in the lane to the left of me or to the right of me, but I can control what's happening in my lane over my black line. And there's so much excitement in that. That realization is what got me through the hardest times of my life. It's what led me to the London 2012 Paralympic Games, where I had the honor of sitting atop the Paralympic podium and winning gold in the 50-meter freestyle. A moment that I will never forget. seeing our flag raise, hearing our national anthem play, and having this strung around my neck. Every time I see this gold medal, I think of not the race, which took me 31.13 seconds to win this, but I think of that journey, the community, the people that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. This medal took every ounce of fight I had. I went into the London 2012 Games prospect for 9 of 9 gold medals. I was the world lead in every event on the Paralympic program, 4 years after my injury. But in Paralympic sport, we don't all race in the same category. It's kind of like wrestling, if you will. There's different weight classes. And in Paralympics, we all have different physical impairments, so they break us up into categories. 3 days before the London 2012 Games, my category, also known as classification in Paralympic terms, was reviewed. I had to go to a room where classifiers reviewed my charts and everything. We thought it was semantic. Just cross a few T's, dot a few I's. We'd move on like nothing ever happened. And in 3 days, I would begin my first race of those games. We got out of that room and I found out that I had been moved up the classification. The nitty gritty of it is 1 is the most severe impairment, 10 is the least severe, and it runs on a scale. Your body's assessed and they give it a point system. So not all wheelchair users race against wheelchair users or amputees race against amputees. It's looking at your whole body. But in that class above me, every single woman in it walked. Nobody used a wheelchair. Everybody had function of their legs. And here I was completely paralyzed from my waist down. I'd never raced these women in my entire career. And not only that, but by moving a classification, it meant that every single one of my events changed. The days I was to swim changed. Day 1 was supposed to be the 100 backstroke. Instead, it was a day off. Day 3 was supposed to be a day off. Instead, it was my 50-meter freestyle. Everything my coach and I had planned for in a taper felt like it seemingly went out the window 3 days before the biggest meet of my career. We filed an appeal. We were confident we were going to win. And by day 1 in the morning, I'd be racing that 100 back. We found out 3 hours before opening ceremonies the night before that it was denied and I would in fact not be racing that next morning. I'd be lying if I told you guys I didn't want to throw the towel in. I wanted so badly to go home. I honestly didn't know in that moment if I had the fight in me to do this. I called my coach. He gave me a pep talk that was probably much tougher love than I ever anticipated in that moment. And he reminded me what my priorities were. He reminded me that in that pool, I can control what happens over my black line. And that's all I can control. And that's all I have to control. I showed up for day 3 of competition, September 2nd, 2012. I'd swam on day 2. I got some jitters out. Nothing incredible by any stretch of the imagination, but I made it to finals. So I got a prelim final swim in to get my lay of the land. September 2nd was the 50-meter free. I went to the pool that morning and I had this unwavering sense of confidence that that was my day. I got out of prelims. I was seated 5th going into finals. It was an okay time, but nothing incredible for me. It wasn't a best time by any stretch. And at that point, one by one, it felt like people started counting me out of medal contention. I went in with a bullseye on my back, and at that point, I had nothing more than a question mark next to my name. I went into finals that night, and I sat up on the starting block of lane 2. And all I could think about was what my teammate told me right before I went into the ready room. He pulled my headphone off my ear, and he said, "Go shock the world." He placed my headphone back on my ear, and I listened to my playlist. When I sat on that starting block, I could feel that rush of support at my back. It was like every single person who had been a part of that journey was right there at my back in that moment, pushing me forward. I dove in and I took my one and only breath at the 25-meter mark to my left-hand side. I saw the feet of the girl in lane 3. Turns out I was in about 5th or 6th place at that point in the race. I buried my head and I fought for every single inch of that pool. And I had probably the best finish of my athletic career to date. I looked up and I saw one light go off of my starting block. I heard the announcer announce Paralympic champion and Paralympic record. For me, September 2nd, 2012 was a day to remember it's never too late to fight for what you want. On paper, I should have never won that race. I didn't have really much of anything going in my favor that day. I was mentally and emotionally strung out and exhausted. My body was physically wrecked because I'd missed more days of practice than one would like during a taper, considering I was sitting and fighting an appeal process. On paper, I should have never won. But for me, it's a testament to show what happens when we believe that we are superior to circumstance. Regardless of where you guys are at in your swimming journey or what stage of life you're in, there's something to be said about finding that confidence to know that you don't need everything to go right for the end result to go your way. You just need to stay laser focused on what you can control. I held on to that day for years. It's still the last time I sat on a Paralympic podium. It's been over 8 years now. And every single day since, I have fought to do it again. In 2014, I had a catastrophic injury to my left arm. It seemed as if it was just a simple fall in a shower. It resulted in nerve damage, permanent nerve damage. I didn't know if I'd make it to Rio. I frankly thought about retiring. I felt like I had more people telling me all the reasons why it would be best to just gracefully leave the sport versus try to fight to make a comeback at that point. But I had a small group in my corner, a tribe, as I like to call them, of people that didn't give up on me, people that fought with me and fought for me. And because of those people, I decided to not give up on that dream. And my coach and I fought every single day for the Rio 2016 Games. I had every odd stacked against me. I was still in the 8 class. I was now down another limb. I was racing through an injury. So we showed up in Rio and we raced 7 Paralympic events. My gold medal race from the London 2012 Games, I went in that morning as the reigning Paralympic champion. And after 32 and a half seconds, I realized that I didn't make finals. I was devastated. I didn't reach the podium in Rio. But when I got to closing ceremonies, I realized that success is not determined by accolades and accomplishments. We are all going to be challenged. That's not what determines success for any one of us. True success is in how we respond to the moments and circumstances that are thrown our way. Looking back, the Rio 2016 Games were probably the most successful athletic competition of my career. I'm a better person and athlete for Rio. 2 fifth-place finishes were as good as it got for me. And if I could fold up a 5th-place certificate and put it in a sock and pull it out at every event and show it to people like I do my gold medal, by golly, I would do it every single day of the week. Because I am more proud of those finishes than in some ways I even am of my gold medal. Because they took heart and grit and a lot of grace and humility and all the things I didn't want to have in that moment, but I somehow found the courage to have. I came home from Rio and I was pulled from the sport for 2 years. I had 2 major surgeries. I had to have muscles removed from my neck and chest wall. Logic would tell you now is maybe the time to actually think about retirement. But instead, that fight just got stronger and that tribe got bigger. And I knew if I hung on long enough, I would see this through. World Championships 2019. After 9 years of not sitting on a world championship podium, let alone making a world championship team, I raced in 3 events and won 2 golds and a silver. I went into this spring thinking that everything I had fought for the past 8 years was coming together. My husband and I got married after the Rio 2016 Games. I felt like day by day, my tribe was becoming more and more complete. And Tokyo was going to be the games of my career. And then that day in March, as I refer to it, came. And one by one, athletes all over the country and the world faced their own level of heartbreak as we found out that Tokyo would be postponed. I don't know what 2021 is going to bring. I wish I did. I wish I had a magic 8 ball and I could read it and tell us all that January 1 is going to hit and we're going to be rearing and ready to go. But I don't know that. But what I do know is that today, on September 15th, I get to control this moment. And if each day I choose to do that, one by one, they'll add up to make a difference in the long run. You guys are all different stages in your athletic journey and your personal life. All of this is in perspective to what you are going through. There are seniors that didn't get to graduate. They didn't get to go to prom. There's kindergartners that didn't get their first day back to school. It's challenging, it's hard, it's messy. And sometimes for you young kids, I'm sorry to use this word, but it's okay to say, it just sucks. But to say that we want it to be what it once was, I challenge you to realize that it can be so much better. I would have never won a Paralympic gold medal if January 21st, 2008 didn't happen. I would have never been here in this moment talking to you guys. January 21st, 2008 didn't happen. I would have never met my husband and gotten married. All the beautiful things that surround me today are in my life as a result of the journey I've been on since January 21st, 2008. It's not to minimize the struggle and how hard it is, but it is to say that there is light on the end of that tunnel. And in so many ways, there's light within it too. Little glimmers here and there. You just got to look for it. You got to find it and hold on to it and flame it until it is a roaring fire. So you guys are all swimmers. We talk about swimming probably all the time. I feel like swimmers are the one people where that's like all we talk about, all we think about. It's kind of like a lull in a season. We all know how that feels. It's been a month, 2 months. Trust me, as you get older, and some of you senior swimmers can attest this, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. There's some of my events I'm sitting at 5, 6, 7, 8 years since I've had a best time in them. There's lulls. But just because you're still working on getting there doesn't mean you just stop going to practice. Just because you haven't hit a best time in 2 months doesn't mean you just say, oh, what's the point of training? You still show up. You put one hand in front of the other. You work through your workout. You find little micro things to get better each day. And eventually, if you're consistent enough, you'll get back. They'll bounce back. We're going through that right now. We'll bounce back. It's maybe a lull. It's maybe a season of life. But you still show up every single day. Because somewhere within that, it'll all add up. And we'll all bounce back. And in the process, we'll become better people for it. I don't know what else to tell you guys. Today, when John and I got on this call, he was talking about his week, and I'm sitting here thinking, admittedly, this week's been kind of a rough week for me. And sometimes we don't say that. Usually if we were in person, I'd probably shy away from admitting that. Let me tell you, it's been 3 weeks of practice after practice where my body's felt like garbage. I can't hit times that were just easy for me to hit 3 weeks ago. My body's in one of those ruts, as I like to call it. And when you're 31, they last a little longer than when you're 18. But today I finally had a good workout. And I realized that today that it's the same thing we're all going through right now. Just because I had 3 weeks of bad workouts didn't mean I stopped going to the pool. It doesn't mean I stopped dreaming of Tokyo. It just means I had 3 rough weeks. And maybe somewhere in there, my body's building some new strength. So in a few weeks, I can bounce back stronger. But I want to share with you guys, just hang in there. It's tough right now. I don't know if you have access to pools. I don't know what your situation is right now in Tulsa, but hang in there and lean on your tribe and your teammates and everybody that's in your corner. And when you go through those seasons, whether it's right now in 2020 or a year down the road or 2 years down the road, you're going through something hard personally, just know that you got it. You just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and allow yourself to look forward to what will become versus look back to what you once had. So I am getting some messages that people have lost connections. And I don't know if that's on my end or if that's on individuals' ends. But I hope I'm not talking to a blank room.
The event is
no, you have a good amount of people.
The event is being recorded, so
it is.
Those that get dropped out, we're going to be able to deliver that to the coaches and those attending, and they'll be able to share it with those who missed today.
Wonderful, thank you, John. And it says that people got back on. And guys, I'm now getting to read some of this. We've got sophomore swimmers, senior and parents of 2 senior swimmers. Mom of a senior swimmer. Gosh, moms, you guys are the best. My mother has been my lifesaver. Families. Send some questions in here. I would love parents. What questions do you have? And swimmers and coaches, because I saw there's a few coaches in here. And I think that we've got some time, and I would love to be able to talk to you guys a little bit and answer some questions. So shoot them over in the chat. I'm looking at it right now. I love this. Okay, what has kept you positive and focused through every struggle? My tribe, through and through my tribe. My coach, my husband, my parents, my supporters. Life gets tough. Sometimes it lasts for seasons. Sometimes it's just a few days. My sister is with me right now, and she made me dinner tonight because she knows I'm trying to just focus on my recovery so I can be stronger and better tomorrow. And that doesn't just magically happen. You have to be intentional about it. So, lean on your people. We all have them, whether it's close friends, whether it's parents, siblings, mentors, coaches, whoever it is in your life, lean on them because they're there for a reason. And you're not meant to go through those struggles alone. And that's why we have those people in that community. And, I am so very thankful and grateful for the people that I have in my life. And I think that is what I've been able to do, i.e. my gold medal, honestly isn't really a testament to me. And I don't mean to minimize what I had to go through and the work I put in to win that. But if I didn't have those people in my life, gosh, I would never be a Paralympic gold medalist, ever. There's no way. It's not humanly possible, because every single one of those people were such an integral part in that journey. And just like my comeback, I mean, when I say I can count on one hand how many people believed in me when my arm injury happened, I quite literally mean one hand. I mean, my parents kind of count as the same person. I feel like they're just inherently need to believe in me. My boyfriend, my coach, my siblings, and I had one incredible sponsor who stuck with me through it all. And that was John and his team at Finis. Gosh, I signed on with them right before my injury happened. And I was out of the pool, out of competition for an entire year. And they were with me through the whole thing. And I say that because the people that stick around with you when you're going through the muck is a testament to who you should always keep around. It's really easy to support somebody when they're off winning gold medals. It's a lot more challenging to support the people you love when they're going through a struggle. And when I got up on those starting blocks in London at World Championships, it made that win so much sweeter, because I knew every single person that was supporting me for who I was and not what I had accomplished. And that's what made that such a team win for all of us. So I would just say, lean on those people. We have another one. We've been back in the water since June 15th, and we have an opportunity to race at a meet this weekend. Oh, lucky you. About 36 of us are going. We have no idea how well we might do, but we are going to keep our options open and race. What is your advice? Have fun. Oh my goodness, you get to race. You know how many people would do anything to be able to get up on a starting block and race right now? Just have fun. Who cares what you go? I mean, at this point, guys, think of what we've been through in 2020. So much. And for so many of you, you haven't been training that whole time. There's been time out, but not even just that physical aspect, just the mental and emotional toll that this year has taken on us. And getting up and racing, if you think it's all physical, I'm gonna break your little bubble and tell you that that is 100% not true. There's so much of the mental and emotional that goes into our performance. And so you just got to be graceful with yourself, because there's times where you might be physically on, but mentally and emotionally going through something tough. And sometimes that impacts your performance, and it's okay. You just got to work through it. So I think for you guys, have so much fun, and whatever you go for times, just look at it as a starting point. It's a metric. It's a place to build off of. So don't get discouraged by it, regardless of what happens. Just have a blast racing and let it be something to work towards after the fact. A parent is asking, what do I do for recovery? So I was actually in my recovery room this evening before we chatted. I, at the house, set up a recovery room. It's also my Team USA room. It's a spare room my husband and I have, and it is my little oasis. I'm a huge proponent of the sports psych element and focusing on that. So mental recovery is almost just as big as physical recovery for me too. And so when I have a lot going on in my life outside of the pool, I really find ways to kind of mentally and emotionally decompress. At this stage of my career, I have pretty much an entire career outside of the pool, as well as what I'm doing in the water. My husband and I are co-CEOs of a social impact agency and production studio. And so I keep busy with that. I'm in the process. I just wrote a book, so I'm in the final week of my final edits right now. And so when I've got other things going, that's kind of my place to go and let myself do what I need to do so I can be in the zone for my next workout. And so sometimes that's meditation, visualization. Sometimes it's knitting. I know that makes me sound old. I'm 31, and yes, I knit. But then I also have a Hypervolt. I use Normatec, ice heat, and I have an awesome sports performance training facility that I work out of, where I do a lot of soft tissue work and various different things with them as well. But at home, I've just kind of created it's my Zen space, if you will. And I have It's where I can stretch and do band work and roll out and all of that stuff. But it's also where I can just kind of mentally decompress. What was the hardest thing to get used to when you started swimming again? So I'm paralyzed from the waist down, but I also don't have sensory. So I can't feel the water. I don't have any sensory in my legs. And now post my surgeries on my arm that I had in 2017, as a result of those, I lost sensory on like the whole left side of my neck and part of my chest and shoulder and underarm. So when you think about swimming, we talk about feel for the water so much. And I'm sure your coaches talk to you till they're blue in the face about how it's feel. It really is. That was really challenging to figure out, understanding where are my legs in the water. When I do a turn off the wall, do I have my body alignment back or what's going on? And so for me, a lot of it was just getting really laser focused on what the rest of my body was doing. And I say this to swimmers all the time because you use your legs as a crutch. And I didn't ever realize this until I didn't have a kick. And I had to focus on my core. And so I started realizing that if I just focused on what I'm doing from my head to, for me, it's my belly button, because that's as far down as I have core function. If I focus on that and really specifically what's going on in chin to chest, I can, in essence, control every bit of my body I need to. I mean, it's not going to give me a kick, but I can control, I can feel where I'm at in the water. I can know what my body alignment's doing at all times based on where my spine and kind of like center of gravity is at. And so I honestly think the hardest thing was just figuring all that out. But it was also one of the most enjoyable things too. I love learning. And gosh, 12 years later, I'm still playing with my strokes and seeing if we can't figure out a better way to do it, because I know that's the only way I'm going to keep getting faster and keep becoming a better athlete and really a better person. And so I would say feel for the water was probably the hardest, but it was also oddly a lot of fun because I got to fail a lot, which meant I got to learn a lot and try a lot of random things. And somewhere along the line, we figured it out. Starts was also very scary. Throwing myself off a starting block when I don't have control of my legs was terrifying, but now it's like my favorite thing to do. So a lot of fun things, but I would challenge all of you guys, constantly learn. Oh my gosh, even if it means you're slower for a few weeks because you're working on a part of your stroke that kind of slows you down because you're focusing, just keep learning because it's the only way you're going to keep getting better. How many hours per week do you spend training? So physically training, I swim 2 hours a day. I don't do doubles anymore. I'm 31. I have one fully functioning good limb left in my body, and my shoulders just aren't going to do that for me after swimming for 24 years. So I do 2 really quality hours of training. And when I say that because there's a difference between training and quality training. And I think it's something that's really important, showing up to the pool intentional about what you're doing and not just going through the motions of the set that got thrown up on the board, but really focusing on what it is that you're doing and what is your goal, and picking one thing for that day that is your goal and really honing in on that. And so 2 hours of intentional high intensity training with my coach. We swim one-on-one. So I don't have teammates in the pool when I'm training to kind of push alongside me. It is Steve and myself getting after it over a black line. And some days that's beautiful, and some days it's its own version of torture. But it works for us, and it's good. And it lets me really listen to what my body needs and tailor workouts accordingly, so I can really meet myself where I'm at versus constantly fighting with where I'm at. And then I train with my personal trainer an hour and a half, 3 days a week. So that's kind of my 6 days a week. I swim for 2 hours, and 3 days a week I lift for an hour and a half. But I would say training's nonstop. There's really not a single decision I make through my day that is not focused on how is that going to serve me as an athlete and towards my goals for Tokyo. And that comes down to what I put in my body. It comes down to what I choose to do with my social time, who I surround myself with, because we've all heard that phrase that We are as good as the, 5 people we surround ourselves with. And so I'm really intentional at this stage, especially a year out from a games, of all those things, sleep, all of it. So I kind of stay training 24/7. It doesn't really ever stop. Let's see. When does my book come out? It comes out on March 2nd. The title is Limitless. It just went public for pre-orders on September 2nd. I am so incredibly excited. This has been a dream of mine for a number of years, and definitely not how I thought I was going to, well, I knew it's how I was going to spend my spring. I didn't think it was going to be during a quarantine, which actually became a little bit of a blessing, because when I turned my manuscript into my publisher, I kind of questioned in what right mind I ever in a million years thought it was possible to write a book and train in the final 6 months for games. So it was nice to be able to kind of unplug a little bit and focus on that. And I'm really excited for it to kind of come out into the world, and also slightly nervous, but it was a lot of hard work that went into it. But these are all great questions. Goodness. Let's see. I want to make sure I didn't miss any of you guys. John, they're going to try out the fuse suits you gave them. Exciting. Gosh, tell me what it's like to put on a racing suit again, please.
Let me just share a word why we developed the fuse, right? So, why do we do what we do? I think that's a big message that Mallory has delivered today. You got to be leading with the why. What is it that is encouraging you to get out to that pool every day? And the story about the Fuse technical race suit was, I have a son that swam and a son that played soccer, and the son who played soccer had kids on his team. At 13, 14, they quit the team. And I wondered, these kids are really good. What is it? But the cost of an expensive soccer shoe is like the cost of an expensive racing suit. And I thought that it was economically challenging for everyone to compete and have a nice set of shoes. And I became determined to build a affordable, durable racing suit that would be guaranteed to last a full season. So Lynn, when you put people in it, don't be afraid to let people put it on. You're not gonna beat that suit up. It's gonna provide compression, because everyone deserves to race. And so I'm glad you get to try that out. Thank you.
It's a great suit, and when John's saying you can put it through the ringer, it's a phenomenal suit. But I love the Rival and the Rival 2.0 now. Yeah. And the fuse goes with me in my bag that I bring into the ready room for every international competition, because I know if, gosh forbid, something happens, especially being in my chair, if that suit snags on a part of my chair, anything happens to it, I know how quickly I can get that fuse on, and I know that I'm not gonna have any issues doing it, and it's gonna be a heck of a lot better than a torn suit. And so I actually carry it with me for the ready room for all of my races for that very reason, because it is reliable and I can get it on in a hurry, and it's going to give me the compression that ultimately is what I'm looking for in a race. So.
Well, I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Mallory, I'm not sure if there's any last questions we're going to jump into here, but I know it's later in the evening, and we are going to make this available to everyone who missed it. And this is it's a great opportunity. It's a hard time, but a wonderful time of self-reflection to find your why and be the best you can be. So thank you from Fenice for joining us tonight. Mallory, thank you very much. Humberto, thank you for making this happen.
Thank you very much for making this possible.
Yes, thank you guys. And I wish I could see all of your faces. I can see John and Humberto, but really thank you guys. I appreciate it, and would love to see you all in person when that's possible. But I hope you guys are all staying safe. And for those of you that are racing, have so much fun. I'm envious just a little bit if you can't tell. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.